Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit True of My Chest and it's by user CapableGoal6116. My husband got a vasectomy and didn't tell me. Throwaway because my husband knows my main. I don't know what to do. My 31 female husband, 32 male, fake name Chris, and I have been married for 4 years, together for 6. When we first got together, we had several long talks about how we both wanted a big family. I wanted to be very upfront that child-free is not an option, and I said I wanted to have at least 4 kids. I'm an only child, and I know how lonely it is. I also said I wanted to have them about a year and a half apart so they could grow up close. He always wholeheartedly agreed to this and often made jokes like, whether we have 4 or 6, have as many as you want. It's your call since you pretty much have to do all the work. And on our wedding day, before we left the reception for our honeymoon, he whispered, "Can we get out of here and get started on baby number 1? I loved how excited he seemed. To be clear, I didn't go off my birth control until about 2 months after we were married, and I got pregnant soon after with our first daughter, Joy. Joy was a happy pregnancy, long birth, but she was a beautiful, healthy baby. She went through colic, which was trying, but other than that, she was a happy first addition according to me. I noticed Chris became distant during my first pregnancy, but when I asked him about it, he just said he had a lot in his mind being a new father. He said he was still excited, but something changed. For reference, we both work full-time. I make about $20,000 more a year than him, and the 5-bedroom house that we live in was a gift from my mom, who was very excited to be a grandma to many. My job is fully remote, but still offers maternity leave, and I have a nest egg savings for emergencies, and feel it's important to mention this because I know finances can be a major stress factor when it comes to having kids, but not for me and Chris. Then Joy came out perfectly. Chris had 3 months of paternity leave and was home with us for majority of that time. My mom visited a lot and paid to have cleaners come. There were still a lot of long nights and it was tough for me to breastfeed, but overall nothing unexpected. Chris still seemed distant, but always helped with Joy. We have an agreed open phone policy, so I did check his phone quite often, but didn't find any sign of cheating. He goes through my phone whenever he wants to. I asked if he found me unattractive while pregnant, and he assured me no, he loves me and he's excited for our family. Fast forward a year after, we're sleeping through the night and I'm back to work. Saw my doctor and was cleared to try for bundle of joy number 2. And Chris seemed very enthusiastic at this point. He even downloaded an app to track my fertility cycle so we could make the most of my ovulation times. We had a lot of fun and he was always very passionate. But 6 months of trying with no pregnancy, I started to worry. I'd voice my concerns and Chris would brush them off. So I tried to be patient, but then almost 2 years passed and Joy is growing up by herself. I broke down to my mother crying and she agreed to come with me to the doctor to get checked out. I was very emotional and scared, but the doctor assured me everything is fine and that I should be able to conceive without any issues. I went to Chris with this knowledge and he was very upset I went to a fertility specialist. I explained that I thought something might have gone wrong during my last pregnancy, concerned that I was maybe blocked or infertile somehow. He said, why not wait and just let nature take its course? And I said, our little girl is almost 3 and growing up by herself. I reminded him of our plans and he just nodded and said, all we can do is try. I asked if he would see a fertility specialist and he got angry, saying there's nothing wrong with him and we don't have the money for fertility treatments anyway. This confused me since we do have money, we have my savings and are doing pretty well. When he went to sleep, I decided to go through his phone again and went back through his calendar and call logs. I noticed about 8 months after Joy was born, there was a blocked day indicating he'd taken off from work. But it was in the middle of the week and I don't remember any sort of special occasions behind why he'd take this random day off. I went through the call logs and found an office number about a week before, and when I googled the number, a local business where you could get a vasectomy appeared. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I instantly felt cold all over, then started to panic. I woke him up and confronted him. He just stared at me while I went off and admitted babies were harder than he thought, and he felt like my first pregnancy took forever. I couldn't believe it. I packed my things, Joy and her things, and drove to my mom's house. She is in distress with my sudden appearance and my inability to stop crying. I finally told her yesterday morning what happened, and she's just beside herself. I don't know what to do, but every time I think about how during sex Chris would talk to me about giving me a baby and he'd had the vasectomy the entire time, I feel so disgusted and stupid. I can't believe my little girl is going to grow up alone. Chris has been blowing up my phone, but I just keep letting it ring and haven't read any of his texts. Wow, this is a tough one, OP, and I'm just gonna focus on what to me is the biggest issue here, and that's broken trust. Sure, we could talk about your open phone policies and how you execute them, but that's something you both agreed upon, and about your family planning, which you were super open and upfront from the beginning, and from what you tell us, he was totally on board. To me, the biggest issue regarding your whole post is the broken trust and the lies, basically gaslighting by omission. He decided to have a vasectomy 8 months after your daughter was born and hid it from you. He didn't even want to talk about it with you. And even though it is his decision, it's one that affects the both of you because it directly impacts what you had both agreed upon for your future family. He is absolutely in his right to have second thoughts about having more kids or rethinking the whole family planning thing and talking to you about it. But he didn't do that. He made a decision for you and then he hid it from you. And because of this, you thought that you were infertile and you went through that stress and going to the doctors and all that stuff. It sucks that you guys are in this situation because he wasn't able to communicate with you. And personally, if I'm very honest, I don't know if this is a lie that I can get over. The trust, to me, is broken. And what is your opinion? What would you do if you were in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Fantastic Anus says, "There's nothing wrong with child number 1 changing his mind, but he should have been open and honest about that and said that he wouldn't be having any more children, and then it would have been up to you as to whether you could live with that or move on from him. What he did, however, was duplicitous and manipulative. I don't think I could stay with a man who was so willing to keep such an enormous lie from me, one which impacts me, my daughter, and my future enormously." My username is meh. He has every right to not want more kids. You have every right to want more. What he did not have the right to do was fool you for years. Men who have had vasectomies but hide it and try for a baby are beyond disgusting. Their wives think something is wrong with them. They go to specialists and sometimes spend a lot of money on fertility treatments. He's a spineless little crap, pardon my words, but it's true, who pushed you to have breakdowns over this. He had every right to get a vasectomy. He didn't need your permission, but he had no right to hide it and pretend you two were trying for another child. STNMTN says, "Wow, so sorry. My wife and I talked about 4 kids, then with 2 kids, changed our minds and agreed on a new number together as a team. At 3, I had a vasectomy. Chris did you wrong. He should have spoken to you about it." OP's edit. To those saying I coerced my poor husband into agreeing to a big family, nope. I was always open and honest about my dreams, told him it's okay if he wanted different things, and he not only repetitively agreed and accepted, he also helped me plan, nest, put together the nursery, and enthusiastically participated in conversations regarding having multiple children around friends and family, and always said we'd have at least 4. That was our number. Him getting a vasectomy behind my back was a complete shock. Also, we've both always agreed to the open phone policy. I never betrayed his trust by going through his phone, since I always had his consent to do so and he has mine. We even have the same phone passcode. I never wanted to be in a relationship where we kept secrets from each other. I know other couples feel different, but this is another thing he always 100% claimed he agreed with me on. I vaguely remember one week where he actually turned me down for sex, claiming he had a head cold and he didn't join me in the shower like usual during that time. But I didn't think anything about it, and no, men never need a wife's signature to get a vasectomy. So, the community agrees that Chris having the vasectomy behind OP's back and lying about it to her is the crux of the issue here, and OP gave us a lot more context regarding their relationship. Now, OP did not give any more context in the comments, and we only have the edit, which means we move on straight to the update to see how the story ends. Some of you made some comments about my mom gifting my husband and I a house, paying for occasional cleaning service, implying that Chris feels somehow emasculated by this, also implying I am too financially dependent on my mom. I make very good money, I have a sizable savings and don't need any help. My mom was excited to buy this house for us as a wedding present. My dad passed away when I was young. He was wealthy and left my mom everything, so she shares his love since I'm her only kid. I make more money than Chris and always have. Yes, his name is on the house, so yeah, I'm gonna get screwed over in the divorce. Some of you complained I broke his trust by going through his phone. He goes through my phone too. We have the same passcode. Some comments called this agreement between us unhinged, which to me is bizarre. Chris, I thought, was my soulmate, my husband and best friend. We don't have secrets, I thought. Isn't that the whole point of marriage? To finally have one person in the world you can tell everything to? To always be on the same team? Obviously, I was wrong, and as many of you pointed out, that kind of love, trust, and openness doesn't really exist, and none of that matters now. Chris and Joy seemed fine to me, but in hindsight, there's always been a hesitation on his part. I always thought it was just typical since the short while my dad was alive in my life, I don't really remember him being affectionate or warm. He was nice and played with me sometimes, but I don't remember being held by him very much. I asked Chris many times if everything was okay when I noticed he was distant. He always said things were great and gave an excuse, just tired, work is draining, no big deal. We're in the US and here a man can go get a vasectomy at any time. I don't know what Chris told his doctor. For all I know, he took his wedding ring off and gave a sob story or probably just walked in and asked for the procedure. It doesn't matter. I'm really thankful for my mother. She's heartbroken for me and like many of you, she already knows my marriage is over. There's been a lot of long nights of me crying that she's endured. I'm numb when I'm not crying and keep getting this creepy feeling that nothing matters. We are getting a divorce. I finally called Chris and he sobbed he was sorry, said he might be able to get it reversed. I've read a lot about vasectomies since my last post, and sometimes it can't be reversed. It's always a risk, and again, it doesn't matter. It's not actually about the vasectomy, it's that the person who I thought was the one person in the world that I could trust, that I was on the same page as, literally writing the book together, made this decision without me and kept it from me and then lied for years. I really thought what we had was true love. Now I'm pretty certain that doesn't even exist. Chris has not offered any explanation. He cried, begged for my forgiveness, and said again that he could get it reversed. Even if he can, the rest is irreversible. He never once answered my question. It's really painful to talk to him, so after 3 times of asking him and him each time dodging answering and begging forgiveness, I finally just said to please leave the house and told him he'd hear from my lawyer. He texted that he's packed and left, and I haven't heard from him since. He never once asked about Joy. My lawyer says I might wind up paying alimony, but I might be able to get the house since it was a gift from my mother and Chris has never made any financial contribution. He also says Chris committed a kind of infidelity since he went behind my back to have this life-altering procedure and admitted it, so that might help me. To everyone telling me it's gonna be okay and I can still have more children, All of that seems impossible right now. My heart is broken. I've never experienced such sadness, and the only relief is when I'm playing with my daughter. Her happiness is infectious. She is blissfully unaware, having the time of her life at grandma's, but unlike her father, she actually asks, "Where's Dada?" I called work and took a medical leave of absence. I found a therapist. My mom has offered to stay with me for a while, as well as hire a nanny. Well, OP, again, I'm sorry that you're in this situation, but at least you're taking steps to move forward. Sure, your heart is broken now, but it doesn't mean it's gonna last forever. You're taking steps towards divorce, you found a therapist, and you have your mom's support. So on that note, here's wishing you and Joy the best in the future. Thank you for sharing and take care. And now let's finish this video with a mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Meowsosaurus. Mom splits hairs with nanny to save a few dollars and ends up back paying hundreds. Karen and Ken are wealthy and extremely stingy. Their kid is Bob. Henry is an extremely sweet, generous single dad who lost his husband a few years ago and dotes on his kid Steve. I have been a nanny for several years now, and for the most part, I've worked with lovely, reasonable families. I have contracts for every family that guarantees the hours that I work, meaning if a family goes on vacation, I still get paid because I'm technically available to work, but they chose not to use my services. Think gym membership, where you pay regardless of whether you've been to the gym in a month. This is standard on nanny contracts. Another bit on my contract is called the nanny share. So if two of the families want to combine for the day, each of them pays 2/3 of my regular pay rate. I get paid a little more for watching more kids, and they save a little, only paying a portion of what they would have paid. Karen and Ken's family went to Hawaii 3 weeks ago, and per my contract, I was to be paid as usual. Before they left, they asked if I could come in and watch Bob the Sunday after they returned so that they could recover and rest. I agreed, and my hours were set at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. that Sunday. They went on the trip, everything was wonderful, and they texted me when they landed saying they would see me at 8 a.m. The next day, when I was about to head out the door at 7:30 a.m., I received a text saying that Bob was just waking up, so I should just show up at 8:30 instead. After the day of nannying, Karen asked if I would stay past my regular hours during the upcoming week so that they could have 2 date nights. I agreed, and Karen said she would reimburse me for all the extra hours at the end of the week since it'd be easier just to make one payment. Totally fine with me. The week finished, and I ended up staying an extra 8 hours total for the 2 date nights. I asked Ken to pay me for 16 hours, but he said he had to talk to Karen first to double check hours and would pay me shortly. When I got home, I received a text from Karen saying, "Hi OP, thank you so much for covering for us these past few weeks. Ken and I are feeling refreshed and the show was hilarious." Then she continued with, "Since we were in Hawaii, you were paid for an entire week while you weren't working. We don't think this is quite fair as it is a large sum of money, so we'd like to apply some of those hours to your babysitting today and yesterday. We will pay you for 8 hours instead." I was furious. I screenshotted the part of my contract that plainly stated I would be paid for any hours that their family was on vacation, and I reminded her that it was in violation of our contract. She reluctantly agreed, and I texted that it would be a total of 16 hours. Karen instantly replied and went off, texting, "On Sunday, we asked you to come in at 8:30, not 8. We are already being generous and paying you for the holiday we took. We expect you to track your hours better next time. This is unacceptable. You need to be as accurate as possible with the hours that we are paying you. We will pay you for 15.5 hours. Readers, this was a difference of $12.5. I was going to solicit the part of my contract that said any rescheduling needed a 24-hour notice, but instead, I went nuclear. Bob has been tagging along with Steve and me to music class and soccer twice a week outside of Karen's regular contracted hours since January. Karen has never offered to pay for those hours, but Henry was fine with paying his full rate for those hours because Steve was having trouble making friends at school and had become close to Bob. I chose not to say anything about this slight bump in pay because I loved watching them play together. malicious compliance time. As Karen stated, I needed to be as accurate as possible. I calculated all the hours that Bob has joined us since January, 6 hours a week times 18 weeks, and the total amount they owed was almost $2,000. In the group chat with Karen, Ken, and Henry, I said, Karen stated that it was of utmost importance that I tracked the hours as accurately as possible, so I took it upon myself to double-check everything, including the share hours. Thank goodness I did. I didn't realize we had forgotten to track all the hours that Bob joined us for soccer and music. Henry, I'm so sorry. Karen actually owes you quite a bit of money. If my calculations are correct, they owe you X amount to you and to me. Henry replied, Karen and Ken, I am so disappointed to hear that OP hasn't been compensated properly this entire time. I don't need to be refunded for those hours because I wanted Steve to continue his play dates, but you need to pay OP's portion immediately. I got a huge chunk of money I wasn't expecting, and I am now on the hunt for my next nanny family. I'll be putting my 2 weeks notice with Karen and Ken as soon as I do. Well, OP, Karen wanted you to keep perfect track of your hours because it's very important, and you did. And it's a good thing that you did. And hopefully you find a new family to nanny soon. Take care, OP, and thank you for sharing. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.